Okay, right, I'll try and keep this as brief as possible, seeing as we're running sort of 15, 20 minutes over time for you. What I'm going to cover today is asset lifecycle information management across a complete lifecycle from front-end loading through to reclamation in the mining space. Asset lifecycle information is hugely important, and I'm going to show you some supporting evidence in terms of why it should be important to people who operate in the mining industry, because we haven't really got a huge an impressive track record based on all of the research that's been done out there. I'll cover some of the areas and where it's hurting in the mining industry, why it hurts. I'll also cover a return on investment study that we've done with some of our users to provide the value. Those of you who don't know Bentley Systems, we're an infrastructure and asset management organization. History has been in the design space through MicroStation as a technology. So we do information modeling from the front-end loading piece right the way through to the design, construction, and then we move into the project and controlled project environment through our project-wise technology, and we're now moving more into the intelligent infrastructure space, and we just last month acquired Ivara, an asset performance management organization for predictive failure analysis. So we're rounding out the circle in terms of our ability to help organizations manage their information flow from its concept through to its decommission and at the handover points across that life cycle, which is where historically the problems start to occur for organizations. So siloed controlled information, normally not a problem for organizations, sits in their departmental organizational function. As soon as it needs to be handed across to somebody else to undertake an activity, we normally lose control of that information. So, what are the issues in the mining industry? I'm not going to read these out. I'm sure you're aware of them. If anybody has got anything that we want to add to that as a key issue or driver in the mining industry today, please share it with us. One of the key ones that we're seeing at the moment is number 6 there in terms of retaining profits. We're seeing the movement in the fluctuation in pricing, and we're seeing some the consequences of that in terms of projects being shelved. I'm not so sure it's as big an issue as everyone's making out in the media, because in my experience over the last 10 years working in the mining industry, the projects get shelved daily. There are hundreds of projects in evaluation every month in our industry, so it's nothing new, it's just a larger scale as a result of it. But we are having to compete with the changing legislative landscape. And if there was an Olympics, and I know we've had the Olympics this year, if there was Olympics in legislative control, I'll let you decide whether Australia would have a gold medal in that one. And in terms of the issues that we have across the life cycle of managing information, it's normally about the accuracy of information. Making sure that that information gets shared across all of the stakeholders who need to access that information. And we've seen a number of presentations today talking about getting information to the right people at the right time. And that's all well and good, but it only helps if you've got that information being delivered in context, that you can see all of the supporting information that goes along with that. Governance, we've already covered as a big issue, and making sure that you've got an audit trail to be able to prove and validate that control. So let's have a look at how the infrastructure industry actually is performing today. So this is from the Independent Project Analysis Group, American organization. They've evaluated over 300 projects. Mega projects are valued at $1 billion and above. Average value here was $3.4 billion. They defined failure of a project, right? So it had to breach these parameters to be deemed a failure. Greater than 25% cost overrun, greater than a 25% schedule slip, or after 2 years in production, they hadn't met the production output that was set for that project. I think that most people in this room will be really shocked in terms of what the findings of this were. 65% of projects failed, and they didn't just fail, they failed big. On average, 40% over. So you would say, if you have a look at where we studied oil and gas, chemicals, minerals and mining, LNG and power, you would think oil and gas would be the worst performer in that group, and you'd probably be right. Just as a show of hands, I know it's late and you all want to go away, who thinks that oil and gas were at 50% failure rate? Anyone Anyone below 50%? Okay. 60%. Come on, you can't all not vote. You vote, right? Okay. 70%. Okay. 80%. Okay. 78% failure rate. At big failure rate. Not little failure rate, big failure rate. Now's a big one, mining. Okay, now I've already given you a lead here that mining's better than oil and gas. So 50% for mining. Okay, a few there. 60%. Okay, 70%. Yeah, there you go. 70% failure in minerals, mining, and metals. Because of this, we ran a series of executive briefings, dinners across Southeast Asia. Because we're not an organization who just think of something, we go out and say, what does the market want? We only do what we're told by the market. And we got a lot of feedback from executives. And we covered all of these industries, and we also covered academia as well. And they came out to us and said, listen, guys, we've got a big problem. We have got a complex infrastructure environment we need to manage. We haven't got control of it. Information's flowing across our organization, and we just really don't know what's happening to it. So we need you to help us to unify that information and to simplify the management of a complex environment. And that's a bit of a motherhood statement, and it doesn't really mean an awful lot to anyone because, you know, unify and simplify, so what? Everybody wants to do that. So we broke it down to them in terms of questioning them. There was 250-odd executives that we spoke to in these sessions. They said, we want you to help us to reduce the cost of operating and running our infrastructure. We want you to help us avoid unplanned run to failures, and we want to be more efficient in the projects that we operate. We want you to help us to reduce the risk of non-compliance to the mandates that we need to support. We need you to help us to deliver a better service to our internal and external stakeholders. And this was both owner-operators and the EPC market who wanted to have a better flow of information. And we need to have information delivered to us, not in real time, but in appropriate time. So it may be daily, weekly, monthly, depending on what you want, so that we can make better informed capital and operational expenditure decisions. So we went, okay, well, we need to obviously find a mechanism to enable that. Excuse me. So why is it important for Australia to be interested in asset lifecycle information management? Because for a country that has 0.003% of the world's population, you're actually running 9% of the world's mega projects with a very limited resource. So the issues here are bigger and greater than perhaps most places in the world. And information is valuable and it's expensive if you get it wrong. This was Institute of Change Management in the UK. They did a survey across a number of data sets where they validated that information from 75% to 100%, the validity, the accuracy of the information. Just an 8% reduction in the accuracy of the information halved the productivity of the people who were working on those projects, which means you doubled the cost of those individuals working on those projects. So another question to you late in the day, how many people here in your organization could hand on heart say 92% of our information is accurate, is valid, is current? No. And that's what we find wherever we go and talk to people. So why does this happen? Absolutely because we have systems that operate in silos. And that is not necessarily ever going to change. So you're going to try and keep a mine operating, but you've got disconnected actual organization that's working there. There isn't any integration between those applications. And to actually do integration is going to be hugely expensive for you. Everyone, any IT company can come in and can integrate applications. Absolutely no problem whatsoever. What they can't do, though, is ensure the maintenance of those connections every time any individual vendor changes their application. The cost of maintaining it is absolutely huge. Why does it matter? It matters because if you haven't got that interoperability, that access, that view to that information as it goes across the life cycle, you're providing different pieces of information to different people who are setting up the systems and the infrastructure to different sets of information, and that creates problems. And I'm not going to go and do the, oh, listen, oh, great disaster, and if you have a disaster, you really should do something. That's not why you should do asset lifecycle information management. You should do asset lifecycle information management because it's death by 1,000 cuts in your organization. Just because nobody dies or it doesn't cost $1 million for that failure of information flow is not the reason why you should be doing it. You add up a number of $100,000, $50,000 issues in terms of rework or inability to access a piece of infrastructure, you've got a massive cost to your organization. And we've already looked at the actual efficiency within the mining industry is unsustainable. And if you have a look at actually the revenue generated through the mining and minerals industry in Australia, over the past 5 years, the actual 90% of the growth in profit and revenue to Australia has been through terms of trade. So around about 4.3% growth from 850 to just over a billion to or just over $1 trillion today, and only 0.7% of that has been through productivity gain. We have a big problem. Okay, so how do you fix the problem? How many people here have had an organization come in and say, put all of your information into our one system, all your problems will be solved? Pretty much everyone's had that story. It doesn't work, it never works, it's never going to happen. We've got too many applications in our workspace that we maintain, they're excellent and they're required for a specific function. So our model is to move to a federated approach. So a Google for the enterprise, but separate from Google in terms of if you do a Google search, you put something in, you get 640 million responses, there's no context around them. But for your organization, you absolutely can have a Google engine that has a federated search in context because you model the relationships between the information sources in your organization that you know are important to you. So you don't need to connect everything, but you need to connect the most important things. Oh, God, that's not good, is it? So if we take the life cycle of an asset right the way across, there are certain disciplines that you need to look at. This is ARC Advisory Group in terms of how they control things. You've got your project and performance management, so that's up to your design build. Then you've got your asset performance management in the operate and maintain to ensure that you're actually controlling it. And then you've got your asset and portfolio and project management, which is when you're making changes to that infrastructure in terms of retrofit or upgrade. Each of those have different criteria and different priorities. So obviously at the start, when you've got your front end design, that you're going to you have parameters in terms of the schedule, the quality, and the budget that's associated to that. We have big pressure in that area in most organizations. And if you ask me the question about why do mega projects fail, it's because there's too much pressure on the front end loading, that they try to squeeze too much into a short space of time. And that's what the evidence says, and also the poor project management that's associated with it. You have a handover in terms of the compliance, and then you have to do your evaluation in terms of which gives me a best return on investment in any projects that I need to apply to the infrastructure during its operate and maintain phase. You can't make the changes once you've constructed the infrastructure. Or you can, but you can see where the cost is. You need to start undertaking the front-end loading control first. Why? Because that's where you actually spend the least amount of money in real terms. So we have a mine that may run for 50, 60 years. The design build phase of it will be 3 or 4. So you've got 5 to 15% of your cost is in the design construct, and then 85 to 95% is in the operate and maintain. Yet people try to squeeze the design build phase and then don't hand the information across effectively into the operate and maintain. Okay, so what's the issue? The issue is that everyone's got contracts, everyone's got requirements. Requirements are associated with contracts. They need to comply with legislation. They will have components that will make up that individual requirement. There will be purchase orders and designs that are associated with it. There will be project phases. There will be a work breakdown structure. And there may actually be some knowledge items that you need to associate with that. And just take legislative requirements in here. So you've got that complex arena, you've got legislative requirements, and if you take the Olympic Dam, although it's just been suspended, they had 600 permanent licenses that they needed to comply with. The LNG market in Queensland have 1,600 permit conditions they need to comply with. So if there's a change to the code, how do you know where that impacts within your mine and your organization if you haven't related that? So if we go back and see that we've actually virtualized here the legislation, so we link, when there's a change to any of these subsections, we can actually link that back to the physical asset, the process, the procedure, the location, the department that it's actually associated with. So asset lifecycle management is not about documents and records. It's far more than that. So it's about controlling every aspect of an associated piece to infrastructure. So you relate the items or processes to each other bidirectionally. Focus on the relationships, record the conditions, capture and track that for audit purposes so that you can ensure that you're compliant with any of the requirements that are in there. So you can classify the information, you can model the relationships, you can make sure that you deliver that information internal and external to your organization under security control and role-based access. It's template driven, so you can start in a department and then move in a phased and modular way out to other areas. You can take that template and then repurpose it and make changes to it and renumber it. So you start to build up a library that you can reapply to projects and also pass on some subject matter expert knowledge to people. And we present that through a portal technology. In this case, this is the actual system we've got on the left-hand side. You've got your discovery element. All of these on the left-hand side that are underlined are all hyperlinked. They're modeled, the relationships between it. So here we can see a motor generator set. We can see if we're going to make a change to that, here are affected documents. I'm going to have to change these documents. Here are affected physical items. So that is what that component is made up of, and there'll be a lot more than that. Here are associated documents. So I don't need to make changes to these, but I might need to read them. You'll see there's an integrated safety management plan here. So I might want to have a look at that before I go on site, because if I go on site without having read it and I haven't got the right certification, I'm going to have to go back and I'm going to waste a day. And who's responsible for that in terms of configuration management? This isn't in mining, this is in Crossrail. This is the largest civil project in Europe going on at the moment. It's a $30 billion tunnel going underneath London, or rail going underneath London. I like this because these guys have really got it in terms of how they're shaping the information. So in this case, these are just contracted red flags in terms of quotations, compensation claims that they're going to manage. And again, you can just do this for any area. So what are we actually doing for the market? What we're saying is that we can ensure that the physical infrastructure that you have in the field is accurately reflected by the information that you have at the head office, that they're both in compliance with the legislation that you have to support and comply with, and if any one of those changes, you update the other. Because change is where it kills you. Change is the cost element. And that's why the industry is actually talking very highly about the approach that we're taking as an organization. So where exactly are you in the maturity model today? Now, we're not a consultancy shop, so we don't actually provide business consultancy, but we do work with partners who provide that capability. Not going to go through this in any detail, but suffice to say, a lot of people, if you have a look on the maturity model of asset lifecycle information management, you can probably work out where you are. A lot of people think they're a lot further along the maturity model than they actually are. We can take most organizations to level 4 quite quickly. You'll notice I haven't highlighted the bottom because we can't change culture. Okay, it's the biggest challenge that we tend to face in organizations. We can't change it. We can influence it. We can actually put in workflows to ensure that processes have to be followed, and they can identify where they're not being followed, but we don't provide cultural change as part of our organization. This is an organization, apologies for if you can't see it particularly well, it's not our slide. This is an organization in the minerals sector that we were working with this year. They took away, we did the evaluation of where they were. They initially thought they were up here. Once they'd done their evaluation, they're down at level 1 and level 2. And that's pretty much the mining industry today. That is where people are. They don't involve operations and maintenance in the design cycle. And they should, because those are the guys who've got to look after it for the total of 40 years and 50 years and hand that across. And that's where they want to get to, but they're also setting themselves some realistic expectations in terms of getting there until 2015. So what do we do as an organization? I think we've already covered this in terms of the ARC advisory. We deliver project information management, we do the asset information management, and we also do the portfolio and project management, the change management piece in there. And we connect all of those, but you don't have to throw away any of the existing systems. So we have native connectors into SAP, Primavera, Maximo, because you're going to have to manage the information in those systems. Okay, so modeling integrated projects to deliver intelligent infrastructure. Why? Because you have different questions that you need to ask about different pieces of infrastructure, and different people ask different questions. And when something goes wrong, you need to make sure that you can actually ask the right questions and find the answers to those questions. Okay. So, where are we at in terms of delivering a benefit to the mining industry? We can help you to ensure that you identify the asset information that's of most value to you. Not everything, not information overload, just the most valuable pieces of information to you as an operator or as an EPC providing a service, or an EPCM providing service to the mining industry. We can make sure that the status of that information is validated. So when you look at it, you can see that it's the current version, it's been approved, and that everyone else has only got access to that information. We can ensure that there's a full audit trail, so you can actually produce information to evidential support to any of your contractual requirements, and that we can control the management of change of that information across the complete life cycle. We do that with two technology platforms, ProjectWise, which a lot of the EPCs and mining organizations use. And so the next steps are, if you're here tomorrow, please come and talk to us on the stand. We'd be happy to talk to you about more. A lot of organizations are using our technology to deliver this value. Some of them, we've just started a project with BHP. We've got another one starting next month with Rio. So the mining industry is really catching up. But our heritage in this is in the nuclear space, most highly regulated industry in the world, and in the oil and gas space. So there's certainly a lot of supporting evidence. And if you're more interested in asset lifecycle information management, please go. We have an ARC advisory series of seminars that you can watch at your own leisure on the website. Thank you.